Hey, this is Edwin McCain.
And I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love's suicide. And I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be greatest fan of your life. Greatest fan of your life.
I was dyslexic and like hyper ADD when I was a kid, so I had a hard time reading. And if you have a hard time reading in grade school ain't gonna be a lot of fun for you. So I was also in church choir, so whatever deficiency I had in reading, I made up for in singing. And I obviously got some attention for singing, and once you start to, wipe away the negative with something the positive, the singing and music kind of swooped in and saved me from getting picked on in grade school, and that was it, man. It was me and music ever since, peas and carrots. Church choir, man, it's a Southern daycare. My uncle was a student of Eastern Appalachian folk music. They call it old time music, sort of kind of like predecessor to bluegrass. It's a direct descendant of all this Celtic music and this music that the Scotch-Irish brought over from when they immigrated to the Appalachians. And they developed, I guess, what Malcolm Gladwell would call a culture of honor. And it's all sort of wrapped up in the music. And my uncle is a student of this music, and he's been archiving these songs for decades, his whole life. And so he would play these songs and some of them are, like Psychon and all these like really deep, scary, kind of violent songs about what life was like, but all based in truth. And so this storytelling aspect of music was introduced to me at an early age, and in a factual way, like this is true. And you think, wow, man, people are living hard. And so I grew up around that, and my uncle gave me my first guitar, an Epiphone, and I learned how to play some songs. The church lady taught me how to play Michael Row Your Boat Ashore, and then that was definitely a bummer. So then listening to David Wilcox, I started listening to him when I was 10. And David Wilcox was amazing because he had all his economy of language, and which I don't possess, but his ability to weave in 1,000-year-old parables with present-day situations and condense it into this nice little 4-minute moment. And then Kevin Kinney from Driving and Crying was a huge influence on me musically. And there was a period of time where I was way into Southern California punk bands, the Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and TSOL and Dirty Rotten Imbeciles and all this sort of weird punk music that had, and I think at that time it was the influence that was that it was just music for its own sake. It had no illusions of financial gain or anything. It was just a voice of teenagers, and of which I was one at that time. It was like, this is our thing, and it's unlistenable to the adults around us. And it was powerful music, and I can't listen to it anymore today. But it was perfect for that moment. It perfectly encapsulated that thing. And I would say that it instilled this sort of punk streak in me that unfortunately has probably cost me a lot of money. But I pushed back on everything. I can't be, which is why I didn't really work in the major labels very well. I just didn't. I had the indie thing in me, and that's what it is. So that's why I drive the bus. That's why I mean, I'm just too stubborn to, have it be easy. I mean, my big plan was, and I love it when people talk about, they had some big plan for the music business, but I mean, if I'm totally honest, I played guitar at a party one time, and some girl that was way out of my league was like, "Hey, you're cute," and I was like, "Yeah, this is what I'm doing." So that led to, well, I got to figure out a way to make a living doing this. And then so, like a lot of people, I threw a guitar case out on the street in Spoleto in Charleston, busking. Because during Spoleto, you can do whatever you want to on the street. So I was like, all right, let's give this a shot. So I'm out there playing whatever 10 songs I know. And I was right in front of this Mexican restaurant called San Miguel's. And the manager, this guy named Greg comes out and goes, "Hey, man, can you play for a couple of hours if you had to?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Absolutely." I didn't tell him I'd play the same 10 songs over and over and over again. But so he said, "Well, look, I'm going to hire you to play up here on this deck. And, can you get a PA together?" I was like, "Absolutely." And I was like, "How much will you pay me?" He was like, "Well, I'll give you $50 and feed you a meal every night." And I was like, I dropped out of college the next day. I was like, I'm rich. I am rich. I got this. I was probably 18 or 19 or something. And so that was the beginning. And there were rats that ran around on the deck between people's feet, out on this deck. It was terrible. And none of the people saw them, but I could see them because I was facing them. They were facing me, and you'd see like rats running. I was one rat away from my gig being over every day. And but I loved that gig. I loved every other gig after that. And, my big plan was just to be, the dude playing guitar and write some of my own songs and maybe travel around regionally. The prototype being David Wilcox, really. Just got play in some listening rooms or do whatever. And I didn't have any like major plans of stars in my eyes. I mean, you got to remember, back then, like the biggest band we knew was like All Good Music Company, or there's a band called Egypt that was playing. The bunch of guys, these gunners that would come down from Virginia Beach, these players that were just the baddest players we'd ever seen. I mean, or Gib Droll, like just sit there and with your mouth open going, holy moly, these guys are famous in our minds. And they were playing basically from DC to Savannah and back. And that was big. I mean, that was huge. You have a van and a trailer and you're playing DC to Savannah and back, like that's as famous as you get. And then Hootie and the Blowfish started to do that. And Dave Matthews started to do that. And we were like, man, maybe we should put a band together. And so right then, the Truly Dangerous Swamp Band broke up. So the bass player and the drummer from the Truly Dangerous Swamp Band was available. I was like, man, I'm going to hire these guys to play with me and play some shows. And it was that perfect storm of timing. And Malcolm Gladwell puts it in his book. And you can't buy that kind of timing. You can hopefully be prepared for that kind of timing. But the timing that occurred at essentially the last moment of the big time music business, and the last wave that showed up, and we all were right sitting on our surfboards, luckily, and rode it into the shore. I mean, there's no way to take any kind of credit for that. It's just like it's like giving credit to the lightning rod for the lightning. We were lucky. We were lucky to be there. And anybody that's still around will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Yeah, I just live long enough to where there's something song-worthy that comes up. And it used to be when I was starting out, when I was in my teens and 20s, and I wrote in these big global themes. You write and you kind of say these things that are these wide-ranging sort of philosophies, and because we're going to change the world. And now I write about sticky handprints that my daughter leaves on a wall, like these tiny little moments or these sort of interpersonal things that happen between me and close friends that ring true. And I think that is the progression of a lot of people that write that into middle and older age. You start to find the poetry in the little things, and it's not so much. I love it when I hear the 20-year-olds like storming out there with their big ideas, because that's what they're supposed to do. Yeah, you do that. I'll be over here singing about handprints. It's just those little things. I don't think of songs as any other thing but a snapshot of whatever my life is at that moment, which is why playing them for years is great, because it's kind of like flipping through a photo album. It's all based in some reality, and so I don't write really on a schedule, because if I'm making it up, I don't really care. I want to write about things that are real for me. So if I got to live long enough to care about it, it takes me a minute. That's a sort of a continuum, an idea that I wanted to get into the storytelling and get into television. At the time when I came up with the idea, the Duck Dynasty thing was monstrous. And I was watching it one day and I was like, man, I know guys that are way funnier than this. And Wayne, I've known Wayne for 20 years. And the first time I ever met him, I was like, dude, that guy needs his own TV show. And what nobody knows about Wayne, because he's all, the lovable hillbilly, is that he was born in Pumpkin Town with spina bifida. And kids that are like Wayne that are born in Pumpkin Town with spina bifida are sort of discarded or discounted. And so he wasn't going to be discounted. And he developed this over life-size personality. And he's sort of this great vehicle for don't judge a book by its cover, because, the young couple who lost their job and has a young baby and doesn't have anywhere to live, well, they live at Wayne's house until they get back on their feet. Or the little girl in the wheelchair that doesn't have a friend, Wayne's her friend. But if the neighborhood complains about his flower garden, he'll mow the yard naked. So you take the good with the bad. But I wanted to tell what I was hoping to tell with Flipping Ships was the story of Wayne over the course of a few seasons. And the boats are incidental. I'm a chronic restorer of old things, and I enjoy the restoration process, but the boats were merely a vehicle to tell a larger story about Wayne and to make, the point I was trying to make about my friendships and empathy, essentially. And obviously, maybe non-scripted television wasn't exactly this place to try to do that on. But I enjoyed it. But I really do. I'm a fan of well-written and well-acted television. And I love the fact that you can tell a story over a longer period of time than we're normally allowed. So that was why I wanted to get into it. And I can't say that I'm 100% done with television yet. I have another thing brewing right now, but that'll be up to the ether, I guess. I have 3 children. Adopted my first son. I'm adopted, so it makes sense, obviously. And middle son that's 10 and a half, and my daughter's 7. It's incredibly fun. It's challenging because you go from sort of all you got to be really responsible for is yourself, and now now I think of their future only. Like whatever I want to do is insignificant compared to what their futures can be. But I find myself in the hypocritical situation of like leaning over my son in 5th grade going, dude, you got to learn how to do this math. And in the back of my mind, I was like, no, you don't. Your phone will do it for you. You know, I mean, where'd you go to school, Dad? Well, I went to a lot of them. You know, I mean, they've seen me be musical, and they are not interested in music, but they see all this other entrepreneurial stuff I'm involved in. So they see a good work ethic. And my thing with them is as long as you're happy working, you know, you're not just playing around. You know, I'm not forcing you to do anything. Somewhere between 50 and 100 shows a year still. So that's a lot lighter than it used to be. I mean, I was playing a bunch for 26 years. So I kind of gave myself permission to back it down a little bit and be home with them while it's fun, while they still like hanging around me. And because it'll be over in a minute, and that road will always be there. And I don't really have any compunction about one day being the dude in the corner of a bar playing guitar. I don't care. I don't have any illusions about that. I'm sure that's what will eventually happen, and I'll be happy there too. So I release songs like every once in a while. I was trying to do it every quarter, but that doesn't, you know, it's so hard to organize the release of something now, because it's like, what does that mean? You know, you just roll it out there into the internet, and people that really like what you do will listen to it. But I'm guilty of the same thing people do to me, because if I go hear AC/DC, you know, I'll give you one new song. I mean, cool. Like, and you can play me one new song right at the beginning and maybe one new song at the end, but I just want to hear Back in Black. I want to hear the whole thing. I want to hear every song on Back in Black. And I'm sure that's a bummer to, you know, Angus and the boys, because they released, you know, 15 albums or whatever it is. And so I get that. Like, I know that when I go out to play, like, if I go out there and go, listen, I'm going to play an hour of new songs, people are going to be like, no, don't do that. I want you to play the songs I like and the ones I've been listening to for all these years. And so I get it. Like, so I don't place a lot of weight on, okay, here's some new music, because I know where I'm fitting in the audience's life. You know, they got those songs. It was a part of their life that they cherish. It was music that was there, and that's what they want to hear. So that's what I play.
And I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest